Welcome to the Cheating Stories channel. I'm Mark Sanders. It's been a year since my world imploded, or rather, since I detonated it. I wrecked everything around me and walked away from the ruins. To be fair, I had accomplices, at least 60 fraudsters were well compensated. I just ignited the fuse. My wife was one of those cheaters, and I took a twisted satisfaction in ruining everyone along with her. Before my rude awakening, I was a blissfully ignorant husband, deeply in love with my wife and enchanted with our life together. Everything seemed perfect. We'd been married for almost 5 years, had a cozy house, good friends, supportive families, and I had a great job. We were earning more than we needed and saving for a future that ended up being drastically different from what we had planned. I wish I could pinpoint something about our marriage that would lend this story meaning, but I can't find any myself. I married my college sweetheart, Lucy. She was sweet, kind, and funny, loving and gentle. She wasn't the type to flirt with other men or dress provocatively, and I never doubted her faithfulness. I work in a research and engineering lab that develops specialized electronics for NASA and the military, jokingly called Geek Central. While we handle complex tasks at work, at home we are quite simple. What you see is what you get. We don't play tricks because we're not good at them. Geeks don't lie. Our reputation is our career, built on truth. Lucy worked in high finance at a firm called Harrington. They manage financial aspects of major construction projects and have been involved in many significant constructions in the mid-Atlantic states. Her office is downtown, and she worked with a surprisingly uneducated group. They understood money, but every time I spoke to her colleagues, I felt like I was back in high school. They were the cool kids, and I was the invisible man. Lucy and her colleagues always discussed all options, and if it wasn't written down, it didn't mean anything to them. I always thought it was just her job, not her values. How wrong I was. The first unpleasant feeling I had was at Harrington's Christmas party. It was held at a hotel across the street from Lucy's office. Drinks were flowing, and while standing by the bar, I overheard a woman say to another, "I'll have to get past my work husband before I can do that." It was strange to hear. I wanted to see who was speaking but instead froze. A quiet voice in my head said, "Stop. Listen. Don't say anything." The woman continued, "We're all going on vacation next week, but I think it won't last that long. A whole week without crossing the street." Both women laughed. "You can always have a small emergency with a work account," one of them added, making them laugh even harder. The conversation troubled me, but I let it go and returned to the party. I didn't think about it again for 3 weeks. One Friday evening, I was coming up from our basement when I heard Lucy say, "Okay, I'll get right on that. What's the point of having a wife anyway?" She laughed. I turned the corner just as she was hanging up the phone. "What does all that mean?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She nearly jumped, surprised. "Oh, that was Tim Harris. It's about work. I need to go to the office tomorrow and next week we'll be working late on a new funding package for a residential complex on J Street." I remembered the conversation I had overheard at the Christmas party. "Sounds like a small emergency with a work account," I said. Lucy laughed nervously. "I don't know if I'd call it an emergency, but it's a good opportunity. We've both worked hard this year. I was hoping we could relax a bit this month and spend more time together. Honey, don't be such a stick in the mud. You have to. Seize opportunities when they come, or you'll lose them forever. I'll make it up to you." She smiled, but her hands were trembling. "What's this talk about a wife? I thought you were my wife. How many husbands do you have?" A flash of shock crossed her face. She tried to cover it with a hasty smile. "Just you, silly. It's how we talk in the office. We team up on projects and joke that we see more of our work partners than our spouses. It's just a little joke." The rest of Friday evening passed quietly, and Lucy went to the office on Saturday morning as if it were a regular workday, except for her casual clothes. She didn't come home until after 7 p.m. I understand hard work and tight deadlines, but I don't like family secrets. I felt there was more mystery in my marriage than I had realized. That Saturday, I thought a lot about secrecy while waiting for Lucy to come home. Even though I always shared work stories with her, she never talked to me about her job. It was as if she had 2 lives, one at work and one at home. I hadn't noticed how much she walled off that part of her life from me. When she finally came home, she went straight to the shower while I grilled steaks. I couldn't stop thinking about that phone conversation. Even if it was innocent, it made me bristle. I didn't like it one bit. Two phrases from the Christmas party kept echoing in my mind: work husband, and crossing the street. Across the street from Lucy's office were a medical clinic in the hotel. It struck me that many people at the party seemed familiar with the hotel. In my foul mood, I kept imagining another scenario. The following week, I decided to get out of the lab and have lunch in my car, parked up the street from where Lucy worked. What I saw, I didn't like. Around 11:45 a.m. on Monday, just before lunch, I saw about half a dozen pairs, a man and a woman, crossing the street and entering the hotel. At about 12:30 p.m., I saw the same pairs returning to their offices. There were no groups of 3 or 4 women gathering for lunch, only pairs. I didn't see Lucy among them, but I was not happy. I saw the same thing on Tuesday, different pairs but the same behavior. I knew I couldn't just walk into the hotel and watch the lobby. Too many people could recognize me, including Lucy. I needed help. That same day, I hired a private detective named Max Lawson. I told him what I knew and what I needed to know and gave him a photo of Lucy. He told me to do the most impossible thing I could imagine: don't think about it. Just go back to your life and act normal. It's probably nothing, and if it's something unpleasant, you'll know soon enough. I told him I hoped I was wasting my money and went back to work. I wasn't wasting my money. On Thursday morning, Max met me in his office to deliver the bad news. Lucy had entered the hotel lobby on Wednesday morning at 11:45 with Tim Harris' arm around her waist. They lingered at the front desk long enough to get a key and went straight up to the 4th floor. They came back down at almost 12:40. Max had a confidential conversation with the bellhop. Lucy and her work husband were regular visitors at the hotel. Max's conversation at the front desk cost me $300, and he warned me it was just the initial payment. I needed ironclad evidence, which meant video footage from inside the room. I hated myself for what I was thinking, but my thoughts about Lucy were growing increasingly dark. To get what I wanted, the bellhop had to cooperate. Max needed to know which room Lucy and Tim would use, then the bellhop would book the same room immediately before and after their next visit, allowing Max to install a small video camera. The next 7 days were awful. I tried to avoid Lucy as much as possible, but she kept asking why. I was acting strangely. I told her it was work-related, but I doubted I fooled her. She wanted to make love, and I told myself that if I hadn't caught anything venial yet, I probably wouldn't, so we did it. My heart wasn't in it. My body barely responded. My only emotions were anger and pain. I felt like my marriage was dying, but I still had little evidence. Without explanations, I knew she was cheating, but I tried to convince myself not to judge definitively until we had the video. I needed to see it to be sure. Max called the bellhop, who booked the necessary room for the morning and evening of the following Wednesday. I went to Max's office on Thursday morning. Now I had the evidence and the accompanying heartbreak. I watched a 40-minute video of my loving wife, the center of my universe, having sex with her work husband, Tim. My world had come to an end. The geek mind sometimes moves in strange directions. I remembered an old joke about a husband who comes home to find his wife cheating on him. He puts a gun to his head and says to his wife, "Don't laugh, you're next." I promised myself I would handle everything properly. They would pay, and I would walk away satisfied. But first, I needed to get away for a few days. I couldn't stay in the same house with Lucy. I talked to my boss and arranged to take leave for the rest of the week. If anyone asked, I was needed in Wallops for the weekend. I went home, packed a bag, left a note, and headed west. A childhood friend, David, lived about an hour away from Baltimore, and he agreed to let me stay for the weekend. I considered it a blessing that Lucy and I didn't cross paths while I was home. I didn't know what I would have done if we had crossed paths, but I wasn't in the right state of mind to act normal. I needed time to think, plan, and most importantly, calm down. Leaving that note was the first time I had ever lied to my wife. I felt awkward about it, but I needed to leave and I wasn't going to back down. The drive west gave me time to think. Did I really know this woman? Was she so good at compartmentalizing her life that she could rationalize having 2 husbands? One thing I knew for sure: my wife had mistaken trustfulness for stupidity. I was never stupid, and lying to a husband who completely trusts you is not a clever trick. Now the days of trust were over, my marriage was dead, and all that was left was the funeral. The thing about childhood friends is that they know you completely. They know who you were, who you are now, and what you're always thinking about. You can't hide from them. David read everything on my face within 2 minutes of me stepping into his house. I broke the news to him and, as a good friend should, he got just as angry as I did. Then there was his wife, Marie, who tried to calm both of us down and make us think. She wasn't defending Lucy in any way, she just wanted me to be sure of what I wanted and not go off half-cocked. Make no mistake, we need a woman's perspective to truly understand what's happening. While I was angry at my wife and her work husband, Marie's focus was on all the other women working in that office. In her view, it was the women who controlled the sex, and every woman there either participated by their behavior or turned a blind eye to it. She said, "Men are pigs, and it's a woman's job to civilize them." Then she smiled at her husband, who reluctantly agreed. "I want to destroy them all," I said. "I'm divorcing Lucy, that lying, cheating snake. She betrayed me, and obviously not for the first time. But I want to hurt them all. I want to make Tim Harris regret he was ever born, and I want every crook in that office to regret every day they crossed the street to that hotel." Marie tried to reason with me. "Make sure you're ready for the consequences. There might be a reason for what happened that you don't know about. Maybe she'll regret her actions so much that she'll never do it again. You loved this woman enough to marry her. Do you want to throw all that away now? Think about it." I pulled out the flash drive with the video and they watched it with me. Tim Harris was a paper salesman, his job involved money, and while I was out working hard, he was dining at fancy restaurants. For 40 minutes, we watched as my wife gave herself to her work husband. She was smiling, even laughing, and I was dying inside. Tim Harris was nothing special. He didn't last long, wasn't particularly energetic. All he did was twitch, and I told her what I saw in Florida and how I felt about it. "That's awful," she said. "I'm sorry, Jack," and I knew she meant it. We spent most of dinner talking about marriage, infidelity, and trust. Stephanie had been divorced twice, both times from handsome men who cheated on her, which had nearly made her give up on marriage. She was very understanding. Over coffee, she asked, "So what are you going to do?" I smiled. "In the near term, I'm going to take you home and hope you invite me in." She gave me a half smile and gently touched my leg with her foot under the table. After that, I don't know. I think Claire and I might be able to get through this. Maybe. I need to know how serious her affair is, and I have someone looking into it. But you know what? I think it's time to stop talking about Claire. I signaled for the check. 5 minutes later, we were walking to the car holding hands. 20 minutes after that, we were cozy on her couch, and a little while later, we were naked in Stephanie's bedroom. Over the next few days, the smile on my face from the amazing night with Stephanie would appear and disappear, alternating with gloomy thoughts about Claire and the future of our marriage. People at work must have noticed something because on Thursday, Dan came into my office, closed the door, and asked, "What's going on?" Sighing, I told him the story. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Ask me next week," I said. "It depends on what the private detective finds and what Claire says. She's coming back Saturday night, so we'll see." I spent Thursday night with Stephanie, and it was just as intense as the first time. I brought Chinese takeout, and we fed each other in bed when we weren't making love or pleasuring each other. "You know what?" I said to her around midnight as we sleepily watched Letterman. "I'm really having a great time. Is that a surprise to you, you idiot?" She laughed. "No, that's not what I mean." I kissed her. "The sex with you is just incredible, Stephanie. I'm serious. You're an amazing lover, but you excite me so much that I didn't immediately notice how much fun I'm having when we're not having sex. Just talking with you, laughing, watching you drip kung pao chicken on those amazing breasts." I leaned in and licked her, enjoying her shiver. I can't believe no one has snatched you up yet. You deserve better than me, honestly." She turned off the TV and pulled me in for a kiss. "You're sweet, Jack, and I've had a wonderful time too. But don't sell yourself short. You're more of a catch than you think. And if Claire doesn't get her head out of her ass, women will line up to make you feel better. Including you." I asked. She looked away. "I don't know. I've almost accepted that I'm not the settling down type, but let's just say I don't know and leave it at that." We left it at that, both understanding that things had gotten very serious. We cuddled a bit more, kissed, and then fell asleep. In the morning, Stephanie was cheerful and playful. We took a shower together, joked over breakfast, and then went our separate ways. Thomas Giordano, the private detective from Florida, sent me an email on Friday afternoon. Here are preliminary results. Please read and review the attached files, and then call me at the office. I'll be here until 6 p.m. I read the report, looked through half a dozen photos, and then called Giordano. We talked for about 20 minutes. The owner of My Blue Angel was a 34-year-old named Robert Adams. He was the vice president of sales at a medical supply company and, according to his neighbors, quite the ladies' man. There was almost always a woman at his house, swimming in the pool, sunbathing on the deck, or even moaning and screaming in his bedroom, and the women never stayed long. Adams apparently enjoyed variety over monogamy. The private detective's photos included several shots of Claire and Adams together, lying by the pool, getting out of a BMW in his driveway, and one of them eating together at a table in the back of the house. None of them showed any explicit activity, though it was clear she was staying with him. Several people in Adams's circle recognized Claire from the photo I provided, but no one could recall seeing her before this week. So, what could I conclude? First, Adams was likely a short-term fling for Claire, or at least a recent one. They probably met through work since Claire worked in the procurement department of a hospital in Charlotte and frequently dealt with medical supply companies and their executives. Whether she planned to continue seeing him after this week was unclear, but he didn't seem like husband material. Given that Claire had been visiting her friend Marjorie about once a year for the past few years, it was likely that Robert was just the latest in a series of affairs, not a singular event. She was evidently very careful in her escapades, as I would have had no idea what she was up to if it weren't for the coincidence of Uncle Tony's binoculars. I was left with a few questions, but not many. Only one main question remained. What was I going to do about it? Baby, I missed you. Claire gave me a casual kiss and a tight hug. I kissed her back, then grabbed her suitcase, and we headed to the airport parking lot with her holding my hand tightly. I hope you have a bottle of champagne for us. Since both Claire and I frequently traveled for work, or in her case, to visit her friend Marjorie in Nashville, it had become a tradition for us to celebrate our reunions with champagne in bed, followed by passionate sex. Tonight was no exception. She quickly took a shower while I unpacked her bags and got the champagne ready. We spent the next couple of hours playing in bed. She seemed as happy and excited as always. For me, though, it felt different, fun and physically satisfying, but a bit empty. When we finished, she snuggled up to me, kissed my neck, said, "Thank you, baby. I love you," and fell asleep a few minutes later. On Sunday morning, Claire, in her robe and with a sleepy smile, peeked into the kitchen where I was already brewing coffee and serving omelets and toast. She hugged me, smiling, then took a cup of coffee. We ate in silence, Claire looking at me tenderly and squeezing my hand occasionally while I just sat and watched. After her second cup, as she started to wake up, Claire said, "Last night was really nice, baby. The best part about being away is always coming back to you, reminding me of what I've been missing." She smiled at me lovingly. I appreciated it, but it didn't stop me from saying what I had been waiting to say. "Do you think I should have used a condom, Claire? I mean, since you've been sleeping with Robert Adams, do you think we're safe?" The smile froze on her face. "Jack, what did you say?" I waited, letting the silence build. Her face went very pale, and she couldn't meet my eyes. "Robert," I said, "the guy in Florida with the boat. Don't play dumb, sweetheart. It doesn't suit you. Did you use condoms with him? What about the other guys you've slept with? I'm guessing there were at least 5 or 6. Were you a good girl and practiced safe sex?" Claire started to cry. "Jack, it's not, oh God, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't, oh God." She buried her face in her hands, crying even harder. When she looked up at me, her tear-streaked face searching mine, I simply stared back. "Baby, Jack, oh God, I know I did something terrible, but how did you find out?" Silence. I wasn't going to answer that question. She looked at me and recoiled from whatever she saw. Now crying harder, she blew her nose into a tissue. I stood up from the table. "I'm going to take a shower." When I returned to the kitchen half an hour later, shaved and dressed, Claire was still sitting at the table, but she had cleared the dishes and washed her face. "Honey, I know I owe you an explanation. I know I messed up, and I love you so much. I just can't." "Sorry, Claire," I said. "Not now. I need to be at Stephanie Prince's house. I think I'll be back by dinner, then we can talk." "Stephanie Prince?" Her sad face turned puzzled. "Yes, You remember Stephanie, the real estate agent. Tall, red hair. Turns out she's really good at, well, certain things. She seems to actually enjoy it, you know. Claire looked as if pigs had just flown through the kitchen window. Stephanie, you're sleeping with her. When I found out our marriage wasn't what I thought it was, I accepted her offer. Yes, we slept together. See you at dinner. That day in Stephanie's bed, I felt I left a good impression considering what I had been doing with Claire the night before. Afterward, we lay around for a while, eating sandwiches and watching the Carolina Panthers. Around 6 o'clock, I got up to take a shower, enjoying the sounds from the bedroom where Stephanie was yelling at the referees to throw a damn flag once in a while, would they? When I came out, she said, "Want to stay for dinner? We could order Chinese again or pizza or something." I smiled. "Sorry, but I can't. Today, I told Claire I'd be home for dinner." Stephanie sat up, giving me a great view of her lovely chest. "What the hell? You mean she's back, and you're here? Does she know?" "Yes. She came home last night. I told her everything this morning about her friend Robert, I mean. And she definitely knows where I am, though I don't think she's too happy about it." A slow smile spread across Stephanie's face. "You're a badass, aren't you?" She got out of bed, pulled on a nightgown, and came over to hug me. "So, what does this mean?" she murmured. "For us." I looked at her honestly. "I don't know. The options are pretty limited, and after tonight, I'll know a lot more. I could get a divorce, in which case you'd be number one on my to-do list." I smiled at her. "Or I suppose Claire and I could agree on an open marriage, given what she's been doing. In that case, refer to the previous point. Or maybe we'll sort things out and get back to where I thought we were all this time." Stephanie stroked my shoulders, looking at me thoughtfully. "I really like you, Jack. Both in bed and out of it, actually. But I don't think I should be in the middle of your marriage. That's not what I had in mind when we started this." I kissed her. "I understand. I need to sort things out with Claire first. After that, we'll see. But I definitely wouldn't mind more of what we've been doing, Steph." Catching her off guard, I grabbed her butt and lifted her into my arms. She squealed, wrapping her legs around my waist and hugging me, giggling as I kissed her again. She wasn't light, but it was worth it. When I walked into the house, soft music was playing, Vivaldi or something similar. I peeked into the dining room and saw the table set for two with placemats, nice napkins, and two tall candles. Before I could go looking for Claire, she came in from the kitchen with a skillet of roast chicken. She was wearing one of her nice dresses, much fancier than usual for a quiet weekend dinner at home. "There you are," she said with forced cheerfulness. "Dinner is ready, so have a seat." A moment later, she returned from the kitchen with two more dishes, rice pilaf and spinach. As I sat down, she took a bottle of good white wine, which we both loved, from the fridge and poured us each a glass. "This looks delicious, Claire," I said. We silently drank our wine and ate our dinner without much conversation. There were some innocent topics, updates from the kids, what happened at my job, but too much remained unsaid. Too many subjects to avoid. It was tense, and she clearly enjoyed it much less than I did. When she cleared the table and brought out a beautiful apple pie, I had suddenly had enough. All day, indeed, all week, my mind had been spinning with thoughts. Could my marriage be saved? Did I want to save it? Would I be okay if I became a single guy again? Was there any future with Stephanie? And I realized that, at least in that moment, everything depended on what Claire had to say, on her story, and how she told it. So, Claire, shall we get to it? What first? Should we talk about my day with Stephanie or your week with Robert Adams? Who had more sex? How many other lovers or friends with benefits or whatever you call them have spread your legs? Will we have an open marriage or no marriage at all? Where would you like to start? I caught her off guard. She stared at me, her face pale, her mouth open, and then she started to cry softly. "Jack, I'm a terrible person," she said quietly, tears streaming down her face onto the table. "I'm selfish, immature, a liar, and a cheat." She looked up at me. "You know that before you, I never had a relationship that lasted even a year. I was always, I don't know, restless or moody or claustrophobic, always dissatisfied with what I had. And when we met, when we fell in love, and you proposed, I was so happy, so thrilled. I felt like, finally, now I've found the right guy, and I'll love him to death forever. No more restlessness, no more wondering what else or who else is out there. Just one person who made me so happy." Now I was the one who was surprised. No deflections, no attempts to downplay what she had done, even though I still didn't know everything. It was not what I expected. And I was happy, I mean, with you, with us, even with becoming a stepmother to the kids. She looked at me. I can't express how happy I feel when I think about it. But that didn't stop me from continuing to be a selfish, spoiled, cheating bitch. And I know I've ruined everything, and I don't even know what. At this point, she completely broke down, sobbing uncontrollably with her face buried in her hands. I waited for her to cry it out. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but a bigger part wanted her to feel what she was feeling: loneliness, guilt, fear. She made me feel terrible, and I wanted her to feel terrible. Not very noble, perhaps, but can you blame me? After a few minutes, she began to calm down, catching her breath. Why don't you go wash your face, and we can sit on the deck and talk, I said. When we sat down, I asked, do you have any idea what happens next? She shook her head, looking worried. Actually, neither do I. But we'll start with you telling me everything. Not the disgusting details, but who, how many, where, and when. And damn it, Claire, if you lie to me even once, even about something trivial, I'll throw your damn ass out of this house. Okay, she said softly, okay. No lies. There were 3. A one-night stand 5 years ago when she was visiting Marjorie. They went dancing at a club in Nashville, both picked up guys, and brought them back to Marjorie's place for the night. And then nothing for 3 years. Claire was shocked at herself, terrified by what she had done, but the fear was short-lived. She did it again, picked up a guy in a bar while visiting Marjorie, and spent the night in his hotel room. He was a married businessman from Los Angeles. After that, Claire said she wasn't as scared. She felt bad, swore to herself she'd never do it again, but she wasn't as frightened. The third guy was Robert Adams. It happened just as I imagined. They met through work. They flirted, and instead of telling him to back off, she let him keep pursuing her. After a few months of private lunches and stolen kisses, she agreed. But she told him she would never meet him in Charlotte. Eventually, he suggested she visit him in Florida. During her last visit to Marjorie, she flew to Nashville on a Saturday, took a flight to Miami, and spent 4 days with Robert before returning to Nashville for the rest of the week. She didn't want to risk flying home directly from Miami and me somehow finding out. She swore she had no intention of seeing him again, and I believed her. Nothing in her story suggested anything romantic, and the sex, at least the way Claire told it, sounded pretty mundane, exciting like a new fling, but nothing earth-shattering. When she finished telling me her story, she leaned back in her chair, looking exhausted. To my surprise, I realized I already knew what I wanted. Okay, I said, now it's your turn to listen. When I point to you, you say, yes, Jack. Otherwise, shut your damn mouth. Okay, Claire, I pointed at her. She nodded, looking scared, then belatedly said, yes, Jack. I love you and value our marriage, and I hate what you've done. Part of me wants to grab you by the neck and slowly strangle you, watching your face as you die. You have crapped on me and our marriage. You betrayed our love, my trust in you, and all the hard work we both put in to make our marriage successful. You should be damn ashamed of yourself. You know that, right? I pointed at her, and she quickly responded, yes, Jack, nodding so vigorously I almost smiled. There are only 3 things that can happen, and one of them I've already ruled out, I said. I stood up and began pacing back and forth, watching her face. First, we can get divorced. Nice, simple, and clean. We just say, adios, and you can move out of this house and spread your legs for any jerk you want. You can be as restless, selfish, and irresponsible as you like. No lying, no breaking anyone's heart. Second, we can decide to have an open marriage. No point in living by our marriage vows, they're so outdated and oppressive, right? You sleep with whoever you like, I sleep with whoever I like, Stephanie Prince or anyone else, and if we feel like it, we can even sleep with each other from time to time. But this option doesn't work for me. It lacks real love, trust, and connection. It's not the kind of marriage that will make me happy, so I won't do it. Period. That leaves the third option. We stay married. We decide that the words we said to each other 12 years ago about forsaking all others still mean something to us, even after you pissed all over them and after I spent several nights in bed with Stephanie. She asked, her voice trembling. I choose the third, I said firmly. She looked scared but said it immediately. Didn't I tell you not to talk? I pointed at her. Yes, Jack, you did. I can't help it. I choose the third. That is, if I have a choice. You haven't said if you'll give me a say, but my vote is for the third. Good, I said. I was pleased but didn't show it. Now shut up again. The only vote that counts is mine. Understand? Say, yes, Jack. Yes, Jack, she said, a tiny hint of a smile appearing on her face. I thought perhaps on mine too. Number 3 means there's a lot to fix, a lot to do. You'll get tested to see what STDs that jerk might have given you, and I think you'll need to get tested too. I was careful with Stephanie, but while you say you used condoms, I'll be damned if I'm taking any risks. You'll start seeing a therapist, and we'll begin going to marriage counseling. Honestly, I think the first one is more important. I don't see this as our problem, it's your problem. But I'm sure the counselor will help us communicate better, even if it's just so I know when I need to kick your ass before you do something even a fraction as stupid again. Next, keep your legs together. Understand? I pointed at her. Yes, Jack, she responded, her face tear-streaked but beginning to smile. Remind yourself that there's only one guy you flirt with, one guy you kiss or touch, one guy you sleep with, always. And that's me. If you don't like it, if you think it's too restrictive, then we go back to number 1. I looked at her, and the smile vanished. Yes, Jack. Yes, I understand. Yes, absolutely. Good, I said, still pacing, thinking there may be more as we move forward. Things I think of later are things the marriage counselor might suggest. But for now, there are 2 more. First, Nashville is done. You're never going there again. Claire's head jerked, and she opened her mouth but then closed it again. She nodded and said, yes, Jack. Your little friend Marjorie was at the center of how you ruined our marriage, and that will stop. If you want to see her, you can invite her here, and after I rip her a new one, I might even let her stay in the guest room for a night or 2. Understand? Yes, Jack, she said it even before I looked at her. And I'm sorry. You're absolutely right about Marjorie and about all of this. Now the last thing. I'm going to keep seeing Stephanie. Not all the time, but now and then, when I feel like it. For dinner, for sex, whatever, until I decide I've had enough or you've had enough. Say it. I pointed at her. Yes, Jack, her face was pale, and tears welled up in her eyes again. Not too pleasant, is it? Thinking about me with her, that amazing body, those long legs wrapped around me. Are we having sex or just kissing? Maybe just lying there, whispering sweet things to each other. No, Jack, it's not very pleasant. It hurts. It hurts a lot, and I know why you're saying it, and you're right. So I say, yes, Jack. She cried a little but held my gaze. And I'm so sorry for being a selfish idiot and for causing you so much pain. She broke down again, and this time I went over and hugged her, still angry but appreciating her warmth and softness. She hugged me tightly, crying, and finally said, you haven't told me your decision yet, but I'm still for the third option with all your conditions. Good. That's my choice too. Number 3. Claire slept soundly beside me, gently snoring. I was still awake, thoughtful but feeling good. The evening had ended with a tender and intimate moment. She wanted to be close, but I declined because I felt strongly about not using a condom with my own wife. She seemed a bit embarrassed when I mentioned it, even though we had been close without protection the previous night. I wanted to emphasize my point. When the blood test results come back, and not a day before. Until then, we'll just have to find other ways to be close. I felt an amazing sense of optimism about my marriage, perhaps in part because of a certain degree of maturity at 41. My reaction to her infidelity was stronger than just the blind rage I might have felt at 25. As I mentioned at the beginning of this story, I know Claire loves me. She's flawed, but she loves me. So, if we can address the part of her that's flawed, maybe we have a chance. I didn't think I would be seeing Stephanie for very long. The sex was great, and I liked her a lot, but I couldn't see how it would help me rebuild my marriage with Claire. Nevertheless, the possibility itself seemed like good leverage, and I really did enjoy licking Kung Pao chicken off Stephanie's breasts. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Stories. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.